We're live.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد. Inshallah, today we will continue our session on Usul al-Fiqh, and today's topic will be the continuation of the subject that we started. We were talking about the qarina, and we covered the first part of the qarina. So we talked about there are three kinds of qara'in. The first one that indicates certainty or jazm. Second one, which is about the adam al-jazm, or that shows the indecisiveness or not certainty or not assertive. And the third one is the one that shows istiwa, or that indicates equality in the sense of whether you do the action or not to do the action, it carries the same weight. So we covered the first part, and today, inshallah, our goal will be to cover both the second and the third, because they are much shorter than the first one. And I will go into the, I'll show the slides in a second. Okay, Jawad, can you see the slides?
Yes, they just popped up. Yes.
Okay, so I'll go into the slide more. Just want to show this slide first again. So as a reminder, so these are the three kinds of Qur'an, and we have already covered the first kind, which shows the jazm, and today we'll talk about ghair jazm and istawa. Jazm is the one that shows the decisiveness or certainty in a command that can lead to the hukum to be, if it is the commanded to be done, then it's a fard, and if the hukum was to stay away from it, then that hukum becomes carries the ruling of a haram. Now today we'll talk about the second and third kind. Second kind is the one that has adam al-jazm, meaning absence of jazm, decisiveness. So it's non-assertive command from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And third one is the one that carries both, meaning it carries is allowed to do an action and not to allow not to do. Either way, there is no sin and there is no ajr. So this is something which is mubah. Okay, so let's go to the presentation mode so it becomes easier to see, hopefully. Okay, so today, inshallah, we will talk about, and I'm hoping it's readable. Okay, that's not the right one. Okay, I just need a second. I apologize. Okay, it should be okay now. All right. I happen to have multiple copies of it. Okay. So when it comes to ghair jazm, indicators or qara'in, this is the one, it is the indicator that is required to determine recommended mandub actions and disliked actions, meaning makruh. And in both cases, as I mentioned earlier, these are non-assertive commands. They are not decisive. So hence, those commands will either fall into the category of mandub or sunnah actions, or makruh if it is dislike action. This itself has three different categories. First one is a request to act or not to act with indication of preference and without restrictions mentioned in the first section. First section here we're referring to the jazm part that we have already talked about. So whatever command is coming in with the preference given without any restrictions of which all the restrictions we talked about in the previous talk, where that carries the ruling regarding the jazm, regarding the decisiveness. And the second one is the present, and inshallah we'll go in a little bit detail with examples that will clarify the things. The second one is the presence of request to leave an action along with silence or approval at performing of the same action. So hence, if the action was commanded to be left by, but at the same time it was allowed to when somebody was doing it and there was approval there, meaning either by the silence from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam when the action was done, or approval by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Third one is about the command that carries the closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, meaning it draws person, the one who acts accordingly, closer to Allah Azza wa Jal. And again, this one has, like the very first one, it has a similar understanding, which is it does not carry jazm again, because we are talking about adamul jazm, meaning the absence of the jazm here. So it has to be besides all those categories that we talked about in the section of jazm. Okay. Now, the first one that says that a request to act or not to act with indications of preference and without restrictions mentioned in the first section that discusses decisiveness or the jazm. And somehow this, okay, I apologize. This one is a little bit messy. I have to open up my PDF. I moved from one laptop to another one and somehow the text is getting mixed up. Okay, sorry about that. I'm not sure if you are seeing my PDF. You cannot see the PDF, right?
No, only the PowerPoint.
PowerPoint, right? Okay. Right. This one is a PDF. Hopefully, this will work better. Okay, now you can see my PDF.
It's blank.
It's blank.
You're in the whiteboard.
I'm not in a whiteboard. Only thing I'm doing is I'm just sharing the screen. And here's my screen. Probably I can just share everything that I have on my. So I'm on the basic one. And okay, can you see now?
Yes.
And now you can see me flipping the pages, yeah?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, it's just things get messy with. Now it's okay. All the text is fine in the PDF. Okay. So now here, like the first hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that talks about tabassumuka fi wajhi akhika sadaqa, meaning that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that you're smiling the face of your brother is charity. Now here we know that the charity itself is a preferred action, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is referring to something which is preferable. So, and also this command that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is giving is not linked with any of the jazm commands indicators that we talked about previously. Hence, this will fall under the category that this is a recommended action, and it is not an obligation. Similarly, the hadith that talks about the courtesies of a Muslim towards other Muslim, للمسلم على المسلم ستة بالمعروف يسلم عليه إذا لقي, meaning when there are 6 courtesies for a Muslim to another Muslim, when he meets, he says salam to him. إذا لقيه, then he meets, ويجيب إذا دعاه, and he accepts the if he's called, if he asks for to come for invitation, then he accepts it. And then the other 4 are mentioned as that he should answer by, if somebody sneezes, a Muslim sneezes, and you say Yarhamakullah, that's also a sunnah. And the 4th one is he should visit him if he falls sick. 5th one is he should follow his funeral if he dies. And the last one mentioned is he should love for him what he loves for himself. So these are the 6 things which are something which are preferable for a Muslim to do for another Muslim. Similarly, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Naha Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam an kasbi hijam." Now here, hijam, which is the cupping, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam prohibits, or he said not to accept, forbid to accept the salary or some sort of earning for doing the cupping. That we see people do that, but this is not a haram action again, because this is something which is disliked, as it does not carry any of the indicators that shows that this indicates a haram. So like the first two ones that we talked about, in those two categories here, when it's talking about these two categories, Rasulullah sallallahu is asking us to do something, and and without the decisiveness, then they come in the category of the mandub or the sunnah actions. While in the third hadith that we are seeing here Rasulullah is asking us to not to do something, or forbid something to us, but there are no qara'in which are mentioned to show that this is a haram category. So, or this is a decisively haram thing. Hence, this comes under the category of disliked or makruh to take the earning for cupping or hijama. And similarly, Rasulullah SAW also mentioned that once the hadith is mentioned that it was narrated from Jabir that a group of people came to Rasulullah SAW and he noticed that smell of leeks, rih al-qurath, and qurath. I looked into it to make sure what does leek or the leeks or the qurath mean. Qurath is something like green onions, and I'll show the picture inshallah. But there are other hadith that talks about similar subject, that Rasulullah forbade us to eat garlic, for example, before you come to the masjid. So when they came to Rasulullah sallallahu and the smell was coming out of them, Rasulullah sallallahu said, "Alam akun nahitukum an akali hadi shajara." That then I tell you, forbid you to not to eat these vegetables. In the malaika, and indeed for the malaika are offended by that which offends people. Meaning, it's better not to go to a group of people, or go. Or the other hadith talks about if you're coming to the masjid as well. So do not eat leek. And the point is the rih here, the smell that comes out of it. So if you do something else to suppress the smell, that's fine. And qurath itself is halal. It is the issue of the rih that's coming out of it because of the eating. That makes it makruh here again. Because here, again, there is no indicators or the qara'in that can show the decisiveness of this action being haram. Hence, this will fall under the category of that it is makruh. Because itself, leek is halal vegetable. And this is what it looks like. As you can see that it does look very much like green vegetables, green onions, but it is a little bit different. The leaves are, the endings are a little bit thicker, and even the root side is bigger than the regular green onions. But I guess it has a similar smell. Okay, and the second part of this, these indicators that entails either the sunnah or the makruh is when the presence of a request to leave an action along with silence or approval at performing of the same action. So now here, the command was not to do an action actually. So actually this is more about the makruh. That indicates the action can be makruh. So action itself the command was not to do it. But then when the action was done, so there was a silence or approval of that action. Like the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that talks about usage of the wine that comes from the grapes. And the hadith says that Tariq bin Suwaid al-Hadrami said, I said to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, O Rasulullah, in our land there are grapes which we squeeze to make wine. Can we drink from it? And he said no. And I repeated the question, and said, we treat the sick with it. And Rasulullah says, "Inna dhalika laysa bishifa'in walakinnahu da." That that is not a cure, it is a disease. Meaning, it was already known that khamr is haram, wine is haram here. But they were using it as something to cure. And Rasulullah, when he was asked if they can use this as a medicine, and Rasulullah refused it, that shows that it continues to be haram here. And contrary to that, the other hadith that talks about the urine of the camel. And that's a story that talks about that when the Sahaba came to Medina, the climate of the Medina did not suit some of the people. So Rasulullah ordered them to follow his shepherd and his camel and drink their milk and urine as medicine. Now we know that the urine itself is a najis, it's haram to drink, but in this case, when somebody was sick, and for the cure for their sickness specifically, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam allowed the people to drink the urine of the camel. Now here, if we combine these two hadith, the first one that talks about the issue of the khamr, or the intoxicant, in this case the grape wine, when he was asked that can we use that to cure the sickness, and Rasulullah refused it, and he mentioned that this is not a cure, it's a sickness, it's a disease. While in the case of urine of the camel, which is haram itself, but in that specific case of the sickness, to cure the sickness, Rasulullah approved of it. So now when you cure or when you use the urine of the camel for medicational purposes, which is haram in general, but it was allowed later on for this kind of a disease, it is considered as a makruh. So that's what the qarina is: the presence of request to leave an action along with silence or approval at performing of the same action. Okay, and the third one, the third indicator about the ghair jazim is the requested action draws closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and without restrictions mentioned in the first section again. Meaning, if the action that a person is doing, or it has been commanded to do, and that brings a closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, but that command does not carry any of the jazm indicators, which were the 12 of them, for example, we discussed previously. So if none of those indicators exist in that command, then this command will act as something which carries the qarina of non-assertive command. Hence, if it's an action to do, then it will become a mandub action. Like the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that says, "Ma min muslimin yuqridu musliman qardan marratain illa kana ka sadaqatiha marra," meaning that there is no Muslim there's no Muslim who lends something to another Muslim twice, but it will be considered as a sadaqah. Meaning, if a person is in need and you give him a loan, and he comes back again for the loan of the similar thing, then you give the loan back to him, and this is considered as a charity, as far as goes to the reward that a person is going to get. Similarly, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has mentioned about the sadaqah, that if anyone gives a sadaqah even if it's as small as a date, and he earned it honestly, because Allah Azza wa Jal only accepts something which is tayyib. Tayyib means something which is pure and clean. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not accept which is for example gain from filthy means or illegal means from Islamic perspective. Then that kind of a charity is not acceptable by Allah Azza wa Jal. But if it is only even a date worth, but it is done with honesty, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts it, and Allah would accept it with His right hand, and even if it's a date. And the hadith goes on, it would foster in the hand of the Lord as one of you foster his coal till it becomes bigger than a mountain. So here is the charity that Rasulullah SAW is recommending the people to give. But as you can see, none of these part of the hadith carries any of the indicators that will show that it is a jazim. It is something a must on every Muslim to do. Similarly, the last hadith that talks about in the dua huwa al-ibadah, or another hadith that says dua mukhul ibadah, that indeed the dua is the worship, or the supplication people make. This is the worship, or the dua is the brain of the ibadah. This is all is to show that to making the dua to Allah Azza wa Jal, to make supplications to Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, this is something which is a recommended action that all the Muslims should be involved in making the dua. But making the dua itself here is not an obligation, because it does not carry any of those any of the things that shows the decisiveness. But this dua or the charity or to give the qarb, which is to lend the money to a Muslim brother, all these things are something part of the ibadah, part of something that brings you closer to Allah Azza wa Jal. So closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is indicated from these ahkam, but it is not restricted by any of the decisive commands which were mentioned in the previous section. So this is what is about the qara'in or the qarina part, which is for ghair jazim. If there is any questions or comments coming on this part, inshallah, I'll try to answer that. Otherwise, I will move on to the next subject, next part of the qarina. So, brother, if you can tell me if there's any questions, let me know. I cannot see.
No questions so far, but there are some people on Zoom. They can unmute themselves and ask questions, but there's no question on YouTube.
Okay. And we can always go back at the end, inshallah, again as well. Okay, then the last part, that as we mentioned, there are three kinds of qara'in. The third category is called al-istiwa, meaning that's the indicator that indicates the request to perform an action and the request to leave the action. Meaning, since the command is there for both ways, whether you do it or you leave it, hence it is something which is permissible. So this is بين طلب القيام بالفعل وطلب تركه, meaning that it's between doing an action or to leave an action. Either way, it is allowed. So there are four different categories which are mentioned here. First one is, and I'll inshallah just flip to the one by one instead of just reading through these four here. So the first category is that the qarina that shows that Rasulullah ﷺ performed an action at one time and while he left it at the other time. So Rasulullah ﷺ is the one who brought the message of Islam, message from Allah Azza wa Jal. He's the one who was getting the wahi, and he is the one who directly commanded by Allah Azza wa Jal to do actions. Now, if it was an obligatory action, then Rasulullah ﷺ would have not done it. And he would have not, if it was an obligatory action, then he would not have missed it. So that itself, that he has done the action one time and missed it other time, shows that action was not obligatory. It was not jazim, that it has to be done. Like the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as reported by Tabrani, that it mentions that a funeral passed by to Abbas and Hassan bin Ali radiallahu anhuma, and so one of them stood and the other sat. So the one who was standing said to the one who was sitting, hasn't Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam not risen? He did not stand up. He said, yes, sit down. So actually, it doesn't say he sit down. Actually, it says there's a problem here in the translation. Yes, but he sat down also. But he sat. So we understood from the permissibility of standing and sitting. Meaning, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam at certain time when a funeral was passing, he stood up. While at other time when the funeral was passing, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam sat down as well. So that's a sign that either way, it is okay whether you stand or you sit. So that's a sign of mubah, sign of permissibility. And the other indicator that shows if the command carries the neutrality or istawa or the hukum of mubah is if the statement shows that shows forgiveness for the action in a general way, without any kind of excuse. So if the action is done, it is allowed. So, like for example, when it was asked Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam about samni wal jubni wal fira, meaning asked about samni is as a ghee or butter and cheese and fira is the wild donkeys. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam replied, "Al halalu ma ahallallahu fi kitabi," that halal is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it halal in his book. Wal haramu ma harram Allahu fi kitabi, and haram is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made haram. Wa ma sakata anhu fahuwa mimma afa an, meaning that and whatever there's nothing mentioned or he remains silent about is what is pardon, which is allowed. So something which is there is no command for that. You're talking about the ashiya here, about the things being halal and haram. So in those cases, then it is considered as mubah to eat. Okay. So the question is if it is about the funeral where Rasulullah stand or sat, whether it is about Ahlul Kitab or the Muslim. The event that's mentioned does not say about the Muslim or non-Muslim. So it has nothing to do with that. And as a matter of fact, when Rasulullah one time a funeral was passing by and it was a funeral of a Yehudi. And in that case, Rasulullah stood up and he was asked why Rasulullah stood up. It was a Yehudi's funeral, and Rasulullah said he did not stand up for the Yehudi, it was for the nafs, for the soul. So that's that shows the allowedness that Rasulullah allowed it. In the other case, when we talk about the issue of also Rasulullah from his actions, it shows that he sat down as well. Okay. Now, the third one is the indicator that they are from the instinctual actions, acts connected to the characteristics of the body, and what was created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and subjugated to man. And again, there's no exception or restriction for any of them. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I think the examples clarify this, what it means by that, it is talking about the things which are instinctual actions of the human beings, or the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has subjugated to the man. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَسَخَّرَ لَكُمُ الْأَنْهَارِ, and he subjugated or subjected for you the rivers. So it is allowed for us, for example, here, in this case, the rivers is something which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has subjugated to us, so we can use them. Allah الذي سخر لكم البحر لتجري فلك فيه بأمره, and it is Allah who subjected to you the sea so that ships may sail upon it by his command. So this is all natural actions. It has for example, the ship sails, so sailing the ships, or rivers are there, or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says kulu washrabu min rizqillah, that eat and drink from the provision Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has provided, or kulu washrabu wa la tusrifu, and eat and drink and do not waste, do not be excessive. Tusrifu here it means actually do not use the haram things to eat, while besides that whatever is halal and tayyib, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has allowed it. So all those things are considered as that these are instinctual things that people do when it comes to eating or drinking or when you're traveling. All these things are normal human actions that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put it in the category of these. They come under the category of mubah. Okay, more examples of that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, في ملكوت السماوات والأرض, do they not look into the realm of the heavens and the earth and everything that Allah has created? So now here Allah is just talking about for example, we see the things. of course. So when you see the things, whether it's the heavens and the earth, seeing itself is something which is a natural behavior of the human beings. Of course, the action, the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has restricted besides that, it is not allowed to look at, then that becomes haram. Okay. And then there's a hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has mentioned that once Khalid bin Walid radiallahu anh, he brought, the word is used is mastiger, which is for, the word is dub actually. So I don't know exactly what's the word in English, but in English, I look for what the picture looks like. It looks something like this. It's a lizard, but it's a lizard that is much bigger than a normal lizard. It's found in deserts, it seems like. And when it was brought, Khalid bin Walid, he brought a roasted dub, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who stretched his hand towards it to eat, but it was said to him that it is mastiger or a dub, and so he withdrew his hand. So Khalid bin Walid, he asked him that is it haram? Is it haram for us to eat? And Rasulullah said, no, but it is not found in the land of my people, and that is why I do not like eating it. So now here Rasulullah, he pulled his hand away, but at the same time Khalid started to eat, and Rasulullah was looking at him while he was eating. So that he did not like it, that's a natural something, part of the fitrah. A part of the fitrah of a human being, as Rasulullah did not like it and he did not eat it. And at the same time, he continued to saw Khalid bin Walid while he was eating, and he let him or allowed him to eat. That is a sign that it is something which is a mubah thing to do, and he allowed him to eat. Okay. And the last one is actually, it looks complicated, but it's not as complicated as it looks. What it says is this: every action that was definitely forbidden for a reason, then it is allowed after disappearance of the reason. Talking about if an action is made haram because of mani'. If you guys remember, we talked about the ruling of mani'. Mani' is one of the al-hukm al-wada'i that actually tells us, or declaratory hukum that tells us that if certain situation appears, then something which was halal can become haram decisively. Now, what he is talking about is this: that if an action that was haram because of that reason, because of the mani', and then when that reason disappears, then the hukum goes back to its original state, which is the mubah or permissible action. So that's one aspect of it. On the other hand, when the prohibition was because of the presence of an impediment is the mani', and then becomes allowed after the removal of the impediment. So when the mani' was taken away, so then, the first part I mixed up a little bit. First one was about a sabab that was causing an action to be haram. Now, if the sabab goes away, then it goes back to mubah. Now, this second part of that is when the prohibition was because of the presence of impediment. Impediment is a mani'. When when becomes haram because of the mani' exists, then and then it becomes allowed after the removal of the impediment, then this allowance means returning back to its original state, whatever it was, whether it was an obligation or recommended or mubah, whatever it was. So in this case, it returns back to its original state. Now, for example, the hadith of the ruling regarding the issue of ibah al-intishar, that permissibility of dispersing ba'd Salatul Jum'ah, after Friday prayers, or permissibility of hunting after opening the ihram. So we know that when somebody is performing a Hajj, then he is not allowed to be involved in hunting or game, whatever it's called. But once a person takes it off, then it becomes halal. Now this is because of the specific sabab that existed, and that was making it that to be not allowed. But once the sabab goes away, the sabab here was one was Salatul Jum'ah, and the other one was the Ihram. Similarly, now when it comes to the ma'na hukum, the ruling regarding the impediment, for example, if a person is in the state of impurity, then touching the mushaf is not allowed. So it's actually it becomes a mana, and if a person is in the state of once he comes out of the state of impurity, then it is allowed for him to touch the mushaf or the Quran. Similarly, in the case of a woman, for example, if she is menstruating and she's going through the periods at that time, salah, which is an obligation, that is not allowed for her to pray, because now the haid or the nifas, whatever the thing is, that becomes a mana or impediment for her to perform the fards, because the fard cannot be done. But once she is out of that, or the impediment has been removed, then the hukum comes back again, and the salah becomes obligatory on her, and she has to pray at that time.
Can you just type the question?
Sorry? Seems like there's some questions. Okay. Okay. So the question is, what is the difference between prohibition due to cause and prohibition due to impediment? So if you remember, cause means a sabab, and when the sabab is there, that caused the hukum to come into existence actually. Okay, and when the cause is not there, then the hukum is not there anymore for you. So the hukum appears because of the cause. Okay, while in the case of the impediment or the mania, that actually is the reverse of that. The impediment or mania makes the hukum disappear actually. Like for example, in the case of the mania, the hukum is to pray, right? But if a woman, for example, is in the state of impurity, now the hukum disappears actually because of that. So hukum in general exists, but it goes away because of the mana. In the case of the sabab, hukum is it only appears to be done when the sabab is there. Otherwise, it's not. So these are kind of opposite of each other. One causes to exist, other causes to make it disappear.
Assalamu alaikum, Asim bhai.
Yes.
So the question is, I mean, like during fasting, eating becomes haram. Does this fall into these categories also? And when
Yes.
that sabab of fasting goes away, then eating becomes halal.
Yes. Yes. Okay, these are the qara'in that I want to talk about, and at the end, just want to make sure that we understand that understanding the indicators and the evidences for assertion and lack of assertion, meaning the jazim and ghair jazim, it is important for extracting the rules or hukum Sharii and to exhaust all the efforts, because hukum Sharii is linked to indicators and it's based on it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us all, his assistance and is sincere and truthful in his actions. So the one who is sincere and in his truthful actions here. But see, the point here is I want to make sure that we don't lose something here. When we talk about the whole issue of ahkam, the categorization of it, for example, something is fard, something is sunnah, or haram and makruh and mubah. So the purpose is not to look for excuse not to do sunnah actions, for example, to say, oh, this is not a fard, so that I don't have to do it. See, sunnah action, so all of it, when we talk about it, it's a command from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's a command from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to stay away from something. It may not fall under the haram category, may come under the category of makruh. But so we should stay away from the makruh as well. And the sunnah command, for that, we should try our best to do as much as possible as well. But this is more for prioritization of the actions. So we will not be getting too much involved into a sunnah or mandub action to a point that we leave the fard actions on the side. So fard must be done. That's the idea. So if there are two actions need to be done, the one is an obligation and one is a sunnah. So obligation has to have a higher priority at that time. So when we talk about these categorization, the purpose is not to push away somebody to do the recommended actions in any means. As a matter of fact, we should try our best to do as much as recommended actions we can do. And when it comes to the makruhat, then we try our best to stay away from makruh also. Okay. Of course, we should stay away from haram all the time, and we must fulfill all the obligations, the fard actions. But we should try to do as much as sunnah actions as we can, and we try to stay away as much as we can from the makruh as well. Okay. So this is what I'm talking about. So we stay on the same page. Okay. So that's all I was going to cover today. Inshallah, next week we will move to the sources of Hukum Sharii, in which we will discuss what are the sources which are agreed upon in general by all the Aimma. And then we will also talk about, we'll go a little bit more detail of the Quran and the Hadith, and then we'll talk about those sources which are not agreed upon, so we can understand why scholars may have difference of opinions based on the sources that they use. Okay, any other question or comment? If there is none, we can stop then. Well, Jawad?
So far, nothing. That's about it. Yeah, but we can wrap up, I guess. Jazakallah khair.
Okay, we'll stop here, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت ونستغفرك ونتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Wa alaikum assalam. Jazakallah.